Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session entitled Accelerating Climate Action, the Transformative Power of Rewired Education. My name is Anna Murru, and I work for VVOB, and our core work is teacher professional development and school leadership, and we support governments in these two areas. I'm delighted to be a moderator for this session, and we will look into policy options to get greater collaboration with the education sector as a strategic resource in Africa's transition towards resilience towards climate change, making use of climate change education to promote students as well as teachers and school leaders as change agents in climate resistance and resilience. I'm joined today by a panel of four panelists, and we might have a fifth one joining us, and which I will briefly introduce to you right away. So I'll start here with Honorable Minister Mr. Conrad Sackey, who is Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education of Sierra Leone, and he doubles as the chair of the Sierra Leone Teaching Service Commission. And he has a number of professional qualifications in educational management, teaching, and career guidance. Welcome, Honorable.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Great, thank you. We're also joined by Peace Monica Pimer, who is the founder and director of Nile Girls Forum in Uganda. She is the founder and executive director of this organization, and they it's a women-led organization working on leadership and governance, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and climate justice and economic development. And she also serves on a number of boards. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and then I'll go now to Mr. Koen Timmers, whom some of you may know. He's the Global Teacher Prize finalist for 2018. He's also a keynote speaker, as well as a researcher and author. He launched the Climate Action Project in 2017, and which reaches 5 million teachers and students globally, and he's currently the director of Take Action Global, which is a nonprofit working on climate education globally. Welcome to you as well.
Thank you.
Great. So this is probably the graveyard session. So we'll have people joining us as well later. But I think we'll start now because we have a tight deadline of I think 2:00. So I'll go straight into the questions, and I'd like to find out from you all. Maybe we can start with Peace about what brings you here on to a summit on education and climate change.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. My name is Peace, and one of the things that really intrigued me when I was invited to this summit was that it provides a platform and the opportunity for young people's voices to be heard. But then it's not just us being at the receiving end, but being part of these processes where we can co-create solutions and come up with great collaborative efforts. And that is one thing, because for a very long time, you get to realize that young people are diverse in nature. And most times, as we design all these solutions, we are not cognizant. So this summit is an opportunity for me to get to interact with the different duty bearers and stakeholders and see how we can use multi-sectoral approach in addressing climate change, but most especially through education. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. But I think I'm here from two levels. Firstly, I'm here on the basis that Sierra Leone has had to endure three major shocks that have affected our educational system. The first one was an 11-year civil war. Quite a lot of people lost their lives, including our teachers. Our schools were destroyed. The second was an Ebola crisis or Ebola epidemic, where lots of people, about 4,000 people, lost their lives. And perhaps the most relevant for this particular topic was the fact that we had a mudslide incident where people had gone into a forest reserve, affected the environment, and there was sudden movement of the earth, and 1,000 people lost their lives, just like that. So in terms of the educational system, we've always tried to build this into um, build an emergency preparation and prevention approach into our educational system. So I'm here to find out what other people are doing in that regard, to take that back home. And secondly, I personally come from a very small island, very beautiful. We practice ecotourism. There are no vehicles, no, not the usual type of pollutants that you will have with people coming into this area. But I know at this point in time it is up for some massive investment in development, infrastructural development. It says this might completely destroy the island. So I wanted to see what other people are doing in terms of community activism and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Koen.
Yes, I was really delighted to hear that climate education is part of the agenda at COP. We've been working on it for years, and I'm actually here to represent all of the teachers and students who have been part of that journey. We've been trying to measure the impact as well. And what we still see is that not everybody is equally convinced about the impact of climate education, and that's what I'm happy to share about.
Thank you so much. Okay, great. Sorry, is my mic okay?
Yep.
Great. I can just hear it buzzing. I would love to go back now to you.
Yes.
From a policy perspective, what are your priorities as a country in terms of what you plan, what you've planned, what you're planning in terms of new directives and things that border on climate change and education?
Well, first of all, let me start off by saying that because of the experience that we've had, one of our strategic objectives in our education sector plan 2022 to 2026 century. So we've included things like climate change, environmental awareness, environmental management, and things like that. And we are also, in a sense, working on how do we build schools that will be resilient to adverse changes in the climate. So we now have we have a policy that looks at where do we allocate those schools to make sure that they are not in areas where they will be at risk of any adverse conditions. And we also make sure that we have an environmental impact assessment when we construct schools, and also make sure that we have a climate smart approach to developing schools as well. So these are some of the things that we are doing at the moment, but from what I get from this experience, I will take back and will continue to develop.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And now, first to you, Peace, and then to Koen, the same question. You working outside the education sector, but what do you think would be priorities, and why do you think it's important to interact with the education sector as activists in this field?
Thank you so much. And from the Uganda perspective, but most especially around the work that we do, we get to realize that there is really need for integration of climate education in the different works that are being done. And for example, at Nile Girls Forum, we're working on sexual reproductive health, leadership, and governance. And our main priority is to see how we get to integrate the climate education into that. But also in terms of the policy perspective, we get to realize that most times youth are left behind, and left behind because they are not fully educated or well equipped to come and be part of these decision-making spaces. And for that, we do it from the point that we engage the local district structures, because then that's an entry point for young people to effectively bring change into their communities around climate education, then that can fully then be integrated into the processes at a national level. So one of the things that we have been able to actually do in order to bridge this gap is to engage different activities. For example, in the schools that we operate, to have climate education clubs where these young people get to interact. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Koen.
Well, everybody is taking a look at the government and to the industry when it comes to climate change, and I think we all have an individual effort, and we need to do something as well, and that requires a change of behavior. And for that, climate change education is key. I rather call it climate action education, because I think action is a real crucial component of it. We need to make sure that students are knowledgeable, that they have the right context about climate. We need to offer them the green skills, which are also really crucial, but we prefer to make sure that they are taking meaningful action as part of that, and that they are even getting to the stage in which they are coming up with potential solutions. And so what we've been seeing is that research confirms, and that is, I'm quoting Lawson, that this has a big impact on students, but also on their parents, but because they are able to change their lifestyle at home as well. And with them, through their parents, society's mindset as well. So this is really crucial, I think. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. And Honorable, circling back to you now, can you give us some examples of how you collaborate with other ministries as the Minister of Education? How do you collaborate with other ministries that have to do with climate action and climate education?
Well, I think the primary ministry in charge of climate action would be the Ministry of Environment. We also collaborate with the Ministry of Youth. Again, this is to extend to the community side of things. There is also the Ministry of Local Government. They have oversight over paramount chiefs, so people in the local areas. And of course, you have to collaborate with the Ministry of Finance, because they normally provide you with the resources to do some of these things. And increasingly these days, the Ministry of Development and Planning. So we do collaborate quite a lot with a lot of people to make sure that we have the best, if you like, framework that we can work within.
Great. Thank you so much. And back to you now, talking about activism. What is the strength, you talked about the clubs in the schools, what is the strength you think of youth involvement in all this discussion?
Thank you. I would like to note that youth involvement is just not involvement in that sense, but being cognizant of the diversities that there is in. So for us, still in the work that we do around activism, we have the different sections that we work with, and one is the youth with disabilities, but also the youth affected by displacement, because then the effects of climate change onto them is something that is a whole different direction. And we've got to see that if you already are displaced from your country because of wars and all that, and then you come into another country and you're getting displaced because of climate change, then that is unfortunate. So you get to realize that even when you go further to a person that has already been affected by displacement, but also has a disability, because in one of the clubs in the schools that we operate, we have one that is a refugee from Somalia, and as they were coming into Uganda, he lost his arm. Okay. So you can imagine, even when they got into Uganda, the recent floods, he was a victim. So you get to realize that even as we are coming up with these solutions and the clubs, we have to be well cognizant that climate change is something that will affect every person differently, but also more so those that already have intersecting vulnerabilities. And so it is very important that even as we come up with these solutions, even as we engage the government and other stakeholders, we keep that in mind to make sure that no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you want to also talk about some examples of activism, maybe in your own experience?
Sure. So what we've been doing is creating a platform, and they call it a community of practice, basically, which unites all of the teachers globally who've been working on this. And I think collaboration is key with them, because they are not only sharing best practices, but also concerns with each other. And they are pushing each other to go to the next stage. And it all starts with small steps, but it's really interesting to see that this kind of activism led to a teacher in Malawi planting a lot of trees, millions of trees because of this initiative. And a teacher in Ireland has been doing several other things, very different basically, with another group of students with a different age and a different subject basically. But they brought national change in Ireland with the support of the president for a new icon on recyclable materials as well. So it's really interesting with the same assignment basically, climate, that teachers are coming to different solutions and that they are inspiring each other, and dissemination leads to replication as well. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
And maybe
Sorry,
in
go
addition to that, we had a teacher in Sierra Leone and he lost 2 of his students.
Oh no.
Yeah, during the project. And can you imagine what happens when those students create a video which is shared with all of the other participants? And that is how we bring empathy to the classroom as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that example. It brings a human face to everything that we're doing.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to my answer that I gave before.
Sure.
Whilst I had outlined all the ministries that we currently work with, from the experience that I've had so far in this these seminars, I think we also need to be working with the Ministry of Tourism, because you have ecotourism, so it creates jobs as well. But I was most impressed when I heard that one of the participants today will be the Minister of Green Economy in Zambia. And I think, in a sense, our government has a priority to recruit 500,000 young people. Or let me put it another way, create jobs for 500,000 people. So in actual fact, I see this as a good sector that we can invest in. And especially as it has a double edge way of operating. One, you can gain something from it, another, you lose something from it. And that will enable people to embrace it perhaps better. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I want to just find out, you've been here at the COP, and it's the first time that education is actually featured, right, at the COP. What is why did you feel you had to be at the COP 28? I can start with Koen for a change.
I think it's important that people know what climate education is. Many people have been talking about it, have been coming to COP with manifestos to be signed by ministers, but I think they need to know how to do it, basically. And also, they really are not sure about the impact as well. When I speak with climate scientists, they speak the carbon language, basically. So we've been creating an app which is transferring and translating the actions taken by students to the amounts of carbon, so we can show the impact in each country for every age, for every category. And I think it's really important to see that it's not just like a buzzword, that it actually has to happen. I think that policy leaders need to work on it. I think that they need to invest on professional development, because without PD we cannot do this. We need to train our teachers so that they know how to do it, and it needs to be part of the curriculum as well. I can make a comparison with ICT. We have been teaching about ICT at first. Teachers are still struggling right now. After COVID, a lot of teachers got ICT, they don't know how to use it. And now with climate, the same has to happen, but we cannot make the mistake by making it a separate class about climate. It has to be in every part, every subject, basically. It can be part of literature, science, math, even physical education. So we need to work on that.
So mainstreaming climate in all the subjects as well.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting approach. Thank you so much for that. Great, and maybe to you now, Peace?
Yes, I do believe that when you're educated, you're already part of a solution. And for education to be featured, it is a very great achievement, because the different times that we engage with the communities in Uganda, you get to realize that climate change conversations are very complex in the nature or even the kind of terminologies that are used. So for us to be in this summit and then get to highlight the importance of education, it means that even when we go back to our countries, we are able to design solutions in and in a language that is friendly, but also you get to realize that different times young people do not get to be part of these spaces because then they do not even know what to deliberate on. For example, if you're talking about gas emissions, how many people, not even just young people, but how many people can actually explain what it is or even get to correlate it with the different things that they do? So this is something that is really very timely, because once you're educated, you're moving closer to the solution, but then you're also equally not left behind in being part of the different solutions. But also I would bring it to the policy perspective, because oftentimes young people do not even know what to deliberate on. But to be on this platform where you're getting to, for example, sit with a minister from Sierra Leone, it already shows that you're getting closer to a policy being passed, a policy being implemented. And I believe this is a very good direction, especially for the young people's involvement. Thank you.
Great, good point. We have the minister here. So, Honorable Minister, it's the first time that education is at the COP. How do you feel about that, and why did you feel that you had to be here as well?
Well, firstly, I think education is part of the solution to our climate problems, in the sense that if you take a preventative perspective, people need to be educated in order to be able to prevent certain things from happening. And so in that sense, I think education has a significant part to play in the way we address and we manage our environment. The second thing, I think for me, I wanted to come here to learn from others. I'm blessed today with two speakers who know far more than I do about some of these issues. We've started to even collaborate. So you talked about the teacher from Sierra Leone, and we've had some discussions about how you can support us to train our teachers, not only in terms of those who are currently in the teaching profession, so in that sense, in-service training, but also those who are coming through the pipeline in terms of pre-service. You have just mentioned the fact that having young people gives a different dimension to the whole debate. To be honest with you, the future rests with young people. So it's important that they do invest time and energy into climate activism as a way of actually securing their future. So one of the things I would want to do when I go back is to make sure that I engage our youth advisory board. I do have a youth advisory board. They keep me young. They also speak truth to power, and I like that. So I would engage them in that type of work as well. And perhaps they can act as advocates to make sure that we get other young people engaged in the whole process. One of the big things that run through our educational system in Sierra Leone is a concept of civil-mindedness. And this comes out as a result of the war, the civil war that we had previously. So I think civil-mindedness is not only about tolerance and how we live with each other, but it's also about how we protect our environment. And by caring for our environment, we're caring for others. So for me, this is a learning process for me, and I'm most pleased that I'm here today.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And I'm curious to know now from the other two speakers, what in your education do you think stimulated you to become activists? First to you, Peace, and then to Koen. In climate, of course. We're talking about climate.
Okay, I always give a background story of the district in Uganda where I come from. We are at the border of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and for the longest times we have seen that there are also instances where people get displaced, not displaced because of wars like I mentioned earlier, but because of the different climatic conditions that we go through. So one of the things that really motivated me to actually have this climate education was when I had a close friend that lost their house to floods. And I remember by then they had an expectant mom who unfortunately passed on because of the floods. And that's how I got to have this idea that even as we work on the different solutions at an organizational level, how do we get to integrate? Because then you're seeing there is climate education and health that is featuring, and that is something that we're actually putting at the front of our agenda. So some of these things prompt me every now and then when you walk through the streets and you see people actually going through different things because they are not educated on climate change. And I think also for the longest time, when you engage different communities in Uganda on climate change, they believe that this is just a Western agenda that is being brought into the country. This is something that we do not understand. And I think it's because for the different times people get to think that when you're talking about climate change, then you're talking about the tsunamis, and they were talking about the extreme conditions, for example, the snows that we do not experience in Uganda. But for us to actually come on ground and get to bring it from a perspective, for example, we have very many peasant farmers in the community, and then you bring it at a point where they can get to relate that climate change is not just about floods elsewhere, but it's also the floods that are currently happening. And you'd be really amazed that I think in Africa or in Uganda specifically, there is lots of flooding of recent. And I think that's when they get to realize, oh, this is the climate change that we have been talking about. So some of the different things really motivate us to come up with these solutions, but also get to continuously educate the communities, but also really bringing the young people in front, but also getting the different platforms where these young people can get to interact with the policymakers, but also other young people from other countries. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that personal story. Koen, what about you?
When I started to study, I was pushed into the direction of being an engineer because that is what people care about, you know, knowledge. And when you're good in math, they push you into a certain direction. But I forgot that I actually wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to educate people and give something back to the community. But you can only help as many students as you have in your classroom, you know. So because of circumstances, I got to build a school in a refugee camp in Kenya, and I noticed that a lot of teachers were willing to join the effort to teach them through Skype, basically. And that really inspired me to see that after 1 year only, we had teachers in 75 different countries willing to do more, just like me, to go beyond their own classroom walls, basically. And because of that, we created a project called Climate Action Project, which united a lot more teachers. And it's great being able to work and being connected with organizations like VVOB, being connected with ministers. And I must say, I can recommend helping people is really addictive. So if we all try to do this, we can really do a lot, I think.
Okay. Wonderful. That fits very well with the question I was going to follow up on. Maybe we can start with you, we can continue with you. Teacher professional development. What kind of advice would you give to a teacher who says, I want to do climate change education in my class?
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think every teacher is able to do it. No matter what age of the student, no matter what subject you're teaching, small children, kindergarten, can even make a drawing, can create a prototype in cardboard. Older students can go on an interview with people from the community. They can create small things, and they can learn about greenhouse effects in science. They can read an article about climate change in literature, and they can build small solar lights in technology. Every subject and every age can be involved in this. And start with small steps, basically. Okay. You can always grow and go beyond. Yeah.
Awesome, great. Honorable, do you want to say something about that as an educationist yourself?
Well, as I say, there is a necessity for us to take it very seriously. I see education as a solution to most of the challenges that we do have, because people engage in activities, sometimes because of desperation, sometimes because of poverty, but they don't know the consequences of those things. So in another session, I was talking about the ethical aspects of climate change. I also outlined the inequalities also. Because what is interesting, the people who talk about climate change the least are the ones that are most affected, normally the most deprived. Climate change, to a very large extent, is still is very much a middle class concern, and the only way you can democratize it is by making it an educational issue, so that everybody has access to it. It's universal.
Fantastic. And how do we go from having single teachers that are motivated to do climate change education to a system approach? Putting you on the
well,
hot spot.
I think in a sense, I think we personally in Sierra Leone have started to capture the essence of that. Firstly, it's by making sure that it's part of our education sector plan, which I have mentioned that it is at the
Great.
moment. Because once you do that, then it is your strategic intent. The second part of it is actually making sure that you embed it into the curriculum. Now, do you do it as a separate subject, or do you embed it so that it goes across all subjects? You can be both. And the third aspect is also building into the fact that not everybody is at school. So in the educational system in Sierra Leone, we have the formal side of it, and we have the informal. The informal are those young people who are out of schools, who we are engaging in accelerated learning. And what we've done to make sure that accelerated learning is relevant to them, we've brought in things like vocational skills. Now, for me, I think now we need to hardwire climate action into those informal setting as well, so that they are out in the community, they can understand, the consequences of their actions whilst they're there, and could also act as ambassadors to the community. So for me, I think it should go throughout if we're going to be very serious about it. I have also just before I forget, I also think we need to give teachers rewards for, or some form of incentives for going into that aspect of their work, because it's not something that they had gone into initially, but we can incentivize them to make sure that they have an interest in it. So having an award is something that I would take back with me.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Koen, you've also done a lot of work around this area. What is your take about systematizing climate change education?
At some point, we need to go from bottom up to top down. And so I fully agree with the wise words from the minister. I just want to add to that, so curriculum, professional development, we already covered that, but I want to add to that it is really a win-win. It's not yet another thing on the teacher's plate. It's a real benefit to the students as well, because they will get skills which will bring them new jobs. And it's really important for those children and youth being able to learn about that. So yes, we certainly need to do it, and it is probably one of the cheapest ways, the cheapest solution as well, because humankind always tries to clean up mess with a lot of money, and this is preventing the big mess, I think. So it's crucial. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, we have to wind down now, but maybe I'll ask you all to conclude with what key message you would love to leave the audience with. I'll start with you, Peace.
Right, and knowledge is power, and let us make deliberate efforts in engaging young people, but like I said, being inclusive, being cognizant that they're diverse, and giving them the platforms, but above all, investing in girls' education, because then they're affected quite a lot by climate change. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Koen, and then lastly, Honorable Minister.
I maybe want to add one thing. When you see research is always about a certain crowd of people, it's not always culturally relevant, I think. So I had a meeting with the minister, and I think we need to find ways which suit the best in certain circumstances in certain countries, because they all need a different approach. There's no one size fits all, basically. Yep.
Correct. Yes, Honorable Minister.
I'll build on what you said. Knowledge is power, but also be mindful of the fact that knowledge is education. Education is the solution, and that's what I want to leave the audience with.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, I want to conclude by thanking the panelists. You've been great. Thank you very much for sharing your insights and your positions. And I think the audience will go with a bit of what we have discussed today. And I want to end by just saying that we have just recently launched a technical brief as VVOB. And here is what it looks like. And hopefully there will be also screening the QR code. But if not, we can actually share. There it is. Great. So it's just recently been launched. It was launched, I believe, last week. So it's really very new, and it's a collaboration with a number of organizations to talk about the professionalization of teachers. So how we can form teachers to do climate change education and best practices as well. So anyway, we're hoping to see more teachers and more school leaders engaged into this this very, very critical topic at this very critical time. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for being here. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you to the panel.